This week we're going to be taking a look at a product that has potential to be the best crafting product I've used yet. Let's check it out. Hello and welcome to the channel, everyone. My name is Garmin. This, of course, is the Storycraft Society, and this week we are going to be taking a look at a new crafting product that I have found. Now, if you've been a fan of the channel for a while, or you're new to the channel, I guess, I craft with foam a lot. I use XPS foam, tried and true, really easy to make textures and marks and carve it and all that stuff. I have used XPS? EPS, expanded polystyrene. This is the stuff that you get out of boxes that breaks up into little tiny bubbles. Not so good for carving, but really good for making substructures and that stuff because it's super cheap. I have used foam core foam, which is just XPS foam, but thinner in easier to work with sheets. I use a lot of foam here on the channel, but this week we are coming to review this awesome new product that I found when I was wandering the aisles at my local Michael's craft store. And what I found was a spray can of craft foam. I'm not sure how this stuff is going to work. I have an idea in my head of what it will do. It says sculpt and paint. What we're gonna do today is take a look at this product. I'm gonna try and use it to make something, some kind of terrain, and we're gonna see how well it works, if it is something that you would want to use, and something that I would want to use again. So, with that said, let's jump into it. DAP Craft Foam Spray. Let's go. All right, so I took the time to read the instructions so you don't have to. So basically what it says is that this spray foam is something that is specifically created for arts and crafts projects. Now, there is stuff like this that I've used before for like sealing the gaps in door frames. It's usually yellow in color if I remember correctly. This says that it's supposed to be bright white, and it says that it's specifically made for this. I wonder what the difference is. It double expands and cures to a firm, rigid surface that can be carved, sanded, and painted. But with that said, it says that you're supposed to use the can upside down, make sure to shake it for 30 seconds, use it within 60 and 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Obviously gives you permission to use your imagination, as any good craft product does. So my plan is I'm gonna test this out onto some chipboard, see if I can make some quick little foam hills, see how that goes. Let's go. First things first, let's get to shaking. Every time I do this bit, it's like not actually functional for shaking something like this up. It's just really funny. And it makes my neighbors look at me weird, I guess. So let's actually shake this up. So now that I have appropriately shaken this up, I've taken the lid off. I got the little cap ready to put on here. I put the little straw onto its thing. Now I am ready to test this stuff out. My thought is spray like some little terrain hill type sprays, I guess. And then what I'm gonna do is carve those out using the masonite as the base. First spray, here we go. All right, now my thought is let's do 2 more. One I'm gonna do just like that, and then the next one I'm gonna actually put some plaster rocks in it to see how that works. All right, so with a fresh straw placed on top of the spray nozzle and then it folded back like this so that it can be stored and then reused again later, I have decided to call it there for where I'm going to let these dry. The can says that it takes 4 hours for it to cure thoroughly, so I'm gonna check back in about that much time to see what these look like, but I'm excited to see what we've got. Certainly it didn't go on the way that I expected it to. It ended up making kind of these lumpy, wavy things instead of a nice, smooth surface. But we're gonna see how this goes, give it a little bit of time to expand, and then we'll check back in. All right, so here we are about 5 hours later, and we have the dried result. So overall, I'm honestly disappointed with the result of what came out of this. So it did exactly what it said it was supposed to do. It expanded, it glued onto my bases incredibly well. Maybe glued isn't the right term, but attached itself to this masonite very, very well. It's, you know, it's on there, it's not coming off. It worked to put on the pieces of plaster really well. They are also really on there and not coming off, so that's great. Let's move on to the negatives. So the first thing is this like ripple effect. I'm not really sure why that happened, and certainly that might have been an error in my application of it, but it didn't go on and make smooth shapes wherever I left trails of the spray, which seemed to be really difficult to get smooth in the first place. Those just kind of got amplified. So that's a little frustrating. The last thing that I think is the biggest negative is that it took a bunch of time to dry. Very frustrating, and I would hope that if it took a bunch of time to dry, that a product like this would save me time, but now it doesn't. Not only did I have to take the time for it to dry, now I have to take and sculpt it so that it looks like nice, smooth hill terrain. That's the next step. I'm gonna get this all carved up and see what that looks like then. But for right now, I'm not giving this product a super high grade, at least for my usage of it. If you notice anything that I could use this for that I didn't think about, let me know down in the comments below, because it would be really cool to find some use for this that would be, absolutely exceptional. Okay, so I was in editing and I realized that I forgot to do a really important test on this stuff, which is to see if it cuts with a hot wire tool. That's something that really matters. So I'm gonna test that right now. So immediately, it's harder to cut than XPS foam. I mean, it cuts, but it is not as easy of a cut as XPS foam is. Interesting. Take that for what it is. So once I had all of my pieces carved up and into a general hill shape, I then moved on to getting them all fancied up. Now the way that I did that is I started by putting tile grout around the edges. That got them all smoothed up and looking more like hills. Now to be clear here, I only smoothed the areas that were supposed to be dirt. The places that I wanted to stick out and be more rocky, I left that be a little bit more jagged with a little bit more edges and stuff sticking out. After I got that done, I moved on to getting the base all ready. I started by putting a layer of Eileen's tacky glue down and then put sand all over the edges of the bases. That gives me a nice ground texture there, so I don't have like the smooth masonite underneath. And I was also sure to apply it into a couple of areas over the rest of the piece that might stick out from underneath my flock later. But with that done, it was time to move on to paint, so I moved on to the most basic painting step, which was to put a coat of Blackmagic Craft base coat all over these things. That's just a 50-50 mixture of black acrylic craft paint and matte Mod Podge. This really seals everything, locks the foam up so it's nice and sturdy, and that got me ready to start painting. For paint, I'm not going to go with anything too fancy here. I'm just going to put a watered down dark brown over all of the dirt areas. Then I'm going to dry brush that up with a couple of lighter browns. For all of the rock and stonework, I'm going to be taking a dark gray, medium gray, light gray in dry brushes to get that up and looking great. And then that should get me to the point where it is time to move on to flock. Nothing fancy here, just a simple paint job of dirt and stone. Got these to this stage, and now what we're gonna do is wait for the paint to dry all the way and then put some flock on these to give them that nice little burst of green. But basically that's it for these things. After I get done that, then we're gonna jump to the outro and I will give you my final thoughts on this product. The DAP craft foam, this bright white spray craft foam, is certainly interesting. It's something that I've never used before, and I think that there's a lot of pluses and minuses to it. So let's start positive and then we'll go negative. So the number one positive that I saw from this is that it gets you some really unique and interesting shapes that you wouldn't normally have. I don't know that if I was carving these hills out of a block of XPS, that I would have gotten the shapes and the look that I got when I just sprayed a big glob of this stuff down. The next thing that was actually very delightful to work with was when I put the plaster rocks into the foam. It basically made it unnecessary for me to try and blend the plaster rocks into the foam. With that said, that's my two big positive takeaways. Now for the negative stuff. So the first thing is, I was hoping that this stuff would save me time, that I would be able to knock out a quick set of hills really, really fast that would look table ready and would be fun to make. I don't think this was faster. In fact, I would almost go so far as to say it is slower because, yeah, when you spray the glob, you get some interesting shapes, but then I ended up having to use the tile grout to blend all of that in to make it look like hills, like rolling land. Whereas if I was doing it with XPS foam, I don't know that I would necessarily have to do that. I ended up having to carve this stuff, so that was the same amount of time as I'd have to carve regular green XPS foam that I would use. I guess the overall thing is the look of it when it is not carved is the weakest part about it, I think. It gives you these sort of ish convincing rocks, but not really convincing rocks. And on this one that I did that is just solely spray rocks, no plaster rocks in it at all, I think that it is good enough to be used on a Wargaming table or a Dungeons & Dragons table, but I don't think that it is anything that is display quality. So again, you have to decide what's worth it to you there. The final thing that I'll say, and this is maybe the most important negative, is that with this stuff you have absolutely no control. So if you are trying to make a specific thing, this is not the product for you, because you end up spraying it and who knows how it expands and who knows where it goes and who knows what you're going to be able to carve it down to later. All of that is up in the air and you just have to go with what the spray foam gives you. And for me as a crafter, I don't like that. When I'm making something, I usually have a specific vision and I want to go for that vision. This takes a lot of that control away. But with that said, that is what I think of the DAP spray craft foam. Leave it in the comments below. Is this something that you're going to buy to try out? What uses for it do you see that I didn't use? That would be awesome to know. With that said, that's all I've got for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you are not subscribed, definitely do that. It costs you absolutely nothing, and you will be alerted when we release content every week. So if you like this video, you'll like all of that stuff too. Share this video with a friend that you think would enjoy it. That's the #1 way to help a small YouTube channel out. And that's it. Until next week, I'll be seeing you.